Good morning, and welcome to a edition of the Discord discussions. Welcome back, Mr. Stallings. He's been traipsing around the world with his wife, who has absolute control of his schedule. She just lets him know when he's allowed to talk to us. So, oh, bring her in. Is she there
Welcome
letting
to
you?
the Discord channel. Here's a bunch of personal attacks.
Of course, we love you. But today we're gonna have a good discussion around women, and I don't necessarily have a specific facet of it, but what I want to kind of open with is some considerations, and I'll ask each of us. And what's unique about the panel is Phil and Chris are both currently not coupled with someone. Phil, being a young man, he has a much different preview. Now, there's three of us who are in various states of relationship. I know how long you been married, Stallings?
14, coming on 14. Been with her for 20.
Yeah. When did you guys meet? What grade?
Oh, we've known each other since we were 17. Started dating when we were 20.
So
So,
you guys have literally never known anyone but each other, which is kind of a crazy consideration, right? Whereas with my wife and me, like we actually have discussed quite extensively that we couldn't have met each other in our 20-year-old selves because we would have been terrible. She was super naive, she was super gullible, and I was very far from gullible or naive in my 20s. I was quite the opposite. Hey, Nightscape, welcome for joining us. Uh,
Good day, good day.
just to catch you up, we're starting off on the topic of women, um, and more in a generalization, but I'm sure we'll drill into it. One of the things that I did want to discuss, because we've talked a lot about men and masculinity and how men are affected by those around us, each other, but one of the things that is almost universal, and although there is the outlier, but it's universally understood that behind every great man is a great woman. So I'd like to really kind of start unpacking what that woman looks like, as I know personally my wife has had profound effect on my life. I mean, to the point in which I know that I'm so far transformed from the person I was that I wouldn't have liked my older self. I wouldn't return to the person I used to be. So to me, I think that's a profound influence that a woman has on a man. So I'm going to start with Seth, Blythe, and my two single gentlemen because I know women in their lives have influenced them. It could potentially be their mother, it could potentially be their grandmother, etc. But the women in your lives have an influence point on men that I think is worth exploring. So I'm going to start with Stallings. What would you say is the single greatest influence your wife has had on a change in your behavior or a thing about yourself that you had to change, not because she's like, "Oh, stop doing this," but because you're like, "No, I can't do that," and keep her.
um, big question. So, first thing that would jump out at me is that, like you said, I was a kid when I met her. I can't escape the kind of guy I was when I was in my 20s with her. She knows who I was. Um, her biggest impact on me has definitely been, I hate saying this, but you know, the first time I felt really not selfish, I tend to lean a bit of a selfish, absorbed person, and the biggest influence of my life is that even though I'm still that guy, I can see my empathetic abilities better. I can feel confident in being, um, you know, not a uh, person that I'm worried about the world seeing. I'm worried about the person she sees. And so, it sounds cheesy that we say that they make us better men. They do make us better men. And the biggest influence she's had on me is, to be um, to live for somebody else and not myself. and that changed my worldview. That changed how my goals in life. That changed um, how I want to treat other people. I mean, we were talking about this yesterday, and I kind of picked her brain quite a lot about this conversation. We covered a lot of topics, but on this topic, one thing that correlates here is that, you know, um, she always wants me to be able to see myself, through her eyes. And even though we're throwing out, terms of it, do we really ever do that? And it's hard to do that. And it's hard to do that when you've been together for a long time and you can't hide or shuffle your conversation or
You can't hide who you really are.
hide who you really are. And the bullshit falls off quickly. But I guess in that question, her biggest influence on me has been me not, you know, uh, being as selfish and looking at it through only my eyes. And I know we have influences in our life that help us do that, but my wife's been the best one at it. And I honestly think she's the only one that, that sees that. So that's a different sense of, I don't know what the word I'm trying to look for here is, apologize. Security, that you can comfort, you can fake it to everybody, but you do have one person you can't fake it with. You can trick yourself all day long. I did that for years, but can't trick her. And
She can see through the facade.
yeah, and if I can be that guy, that she sees and the image that I want to be seen through her, then that's my big motivator. So sounds cheesy, but it's true. And uh,
Good answer.
I'll let the other guys take question one.
Fly.
Well, um, a woman do make a great man to make him greater because to me, I just feel like it's the different energy. She knows your energy. When you find someone that links up with your energy, who you are, and they begin to understand you. You have noticed that when couples are together a while, they begin to act, they mimic each other, and they almost start to look alike, you know. But to me, I feel like a man picks a woman for his wife or for his mate is through the veil of his mother and how he was treated through his mother. That's just me. So me and my mate, she just, I'm a type of guy that have dated a lot of women in my life, man. Probably more than the average, for real.
You are Fly.
And yes, but the woman I'm with now, she just levels me out.
She's your equal.
She levels, yeah. She levels me out, man. She's not worshiping me. She calls me on my bullshit. She levels me out, and that would make me, intertwine with her spiritually and with her energy because she knows my energy.
So what you're saying is that she elicits the best version of you, and doesn't allow you to project something that's not true about yourself.
That's true.
Is that a fair assessment?
That'd be a fair assessment.
Okay. Bill, my single brother, who's
these are exact items like when you talk about intimate transparency that have been kind of in the forefront of my mind as calling cards, I guess you could say, that I look for. And I think Stallings mentioned something, or Brian, you mentioned something in reference to their relationship with their father, the relationship with their mother. I think those are good things too. And I think I've had a pretty decent relationship with my mother. Like she stuck around with my dad because we were around. So like it gives you a level of commitment my mother had to us kids. And I think it's been a positive impact for me. But beyond that, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Did you date much in high school, et cetera, et cetera? Or is this is the dating world something you just haven't really engaged in yet?
I don't engage with it. People have tried to set me up on blind dates, which I think are absolutely hilarious, and they end in about 10 minutes because I'm not interested at all in blind dating. Um, Primarily because you ask the poignant questions that matter and they immediately shut down because they're like, yeah, we can't have difficult conversation on the first outing. So I'm not, no. Um, that's happened a couple times, but no, I don't actively try and quote unquote date.
Fair enough. Chris. No sound.
I'll push back first on the idea that behind every great man there's a woman. I don't want to say it's universally, but I mean, Isaac Newton, when you're going through the pantheon of great scientists, Isaac Newton's usually the guy who comes out on top. And I mean, he invented the calculus, he invented optics. I mean, yeah, he invented entire branches of science. Um, and everyone, all the learned men of his day commented on how just insanely smart he was. Like, he was obviously smarter than everyone else and obviously more accomplished. All accounts indicate he died a virgin. He had no business or correspondence with women. And no indications that he was like gay or something like that. Nope, just had absolutely no interest in any of that. Nikola Tesla, another very famous. Nikola Tesla was like 6'5", very handsome, very charismatic. So he was and of course a genius. So he was he would have been an absolute stud for his day if he wanted to be. He would have been a stud today. Died a virgin. So there are. Now these are out. You could say these are outliers, fair, but they are exemplary outliers. They're some of the greatest scientists ever. I'd have to look up Bach. I have a suspicion that Bach did not have a wife either. So
do you think these people potentially were on the autistic scale, being that they didn't lack the social aptitude?
I don't know, but like I see where that's going, and I'm kind of going in the same direction where I'm thinking that, like, I think if you want to be a complete man, you need a woman. Like complete in the sense of, so what do I mean by that? I would mean like having the full panoply of like traditional classic masculine life experiences and accomplishments. So getting married, raising a family, teaching your son how to play catch, raising a chaste and responsible daughter, having grandkids, all these things, becoming a patriarch. All of these are all very traditional and classic, and I think important masculine behaviors that Tesla and Newton knew nothing of, didn't touch in the least. So, I mean, I think everything has a price. Nature loves a balance, and vacuums don't tend to stay vacuums for long. So, I think my guess would be, like, were they autistic? Probably, but I think the larger point being that, or the larger principle that I would speculate is that if you're a man and you do not have a woman in your life, then there is a potential for you to maximize your focus on your area of expertise in a way that you wouldn't be able to do if you had a woman. So Isaac Newton wouldn't have been able to been such a good physicist and so
because women require effort.
On it. Well, yeah, just and that's not
and energy.
Blaming women.
No, not at all. I agree.
That's just, there's finite time in your life, and you have to dedicate it. Yeah, if you have a family, you can't be a man if you're not spending time with your family. So, I would suspect that there is a trade-off, but I think the danger in the trade-off. It's also worth noting, to be fair, Nikolai Tesla was insane. He was in love with a pigeon. and like wrote letters to it. Isaac Newton was also well known as being one of the most notoriously unliked and just like unlikable people in the historical record. I mean, everyone of his day talked about how awful he was in person. Like he had no to say he had no patience for fools. He had no patience for anyone who wasn't on his level, and nobody was on his level, so he had no patience for anyone. And that is an area to me where it's like if he had had a woman in his life, she probably could have knocked the edge off some of that, but he didn't. So instead, it just went completely the other way. So I would say that at the bare minimum, I think a woman, and I could say from my own experience being single versus being in long-term relationships, which is the only type I do, uh, yeah, I'm much more level and I'm like a calmer person overall. I'm less aggressive when there's a woman in my life, no question.
So
So I'll end on that.
one of the things that I appreciate about my wife, and it's something that I think it's a universal thing because when you go and look at, like, I live in Texas, right? So when this area was founded, when the people were settling Texas, right? You needed both people because your wife had to spit out kids so that you had help to build the ranch, etc. And the man's job was quite specific. You know, you had to work the land, you had to build the house, you had to go hunt the deer, you had to go work the crop. Like, there was a very hard life that required two people to accomplish.
And everyone and people these days they talk about like those older time gendered roles. And
In
the
efficacy.
one thing well, I think the one thing that needs to be emphasized is that unless you were rich, unless you were in the 1% or royalty or something, the vast majority of people, like, be you a man or be you a woman, you were working from sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
What you were working on was determined by your gender, but you were working. Nobody had a free ride. Nobody had an easy time.
There was no 50s
I'll
housewife.
find a picture while you talk.
Right, but there was no 50s housewife in the
No,
1800s.
there was no. Yeah, where she's vaguely bored because all
Yeah.
of a sudden, for the first time in
The
human
homemaker.
history, you have all of these machines that have made the task of being a homemaker something that you can accomplish in, say, half of your day instead of all of it. You have a dishwasher, you have a washing machine. Those tasks, especially washing clothes,
Took
like you
time.
have to load them up, go down to the river, blah 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 blah, blah on rocks, sun.
Soak
But it
'em,
was like an
yeah.
all-day thing. Now you just load them in a thing, and you go watch Netflix. Like it's so, it all of a sudden human technology made one of the gender roles, that of being a housewife, have all of this free time and no purpose, and women were still like in that box where they couldn't just like, oh, well, I've got some free time, I'm just going to go get a bunch of my girlfriends, hop down to the local women's gym, play a pickup game of hoops, like, or I'm just going to like pick up some hobby or go on the internet. Or no, they were just expected to still be at home because back in the day, well, that was enough. You had enough work to do there. Like if you had a bit of free time, you're pretty lucky. So yeah, no wonder a bunch of housewives in the 50s were suddenly taking benzos, drinking alcohol, or gassing themselves in ovens. It was because they had no purpose and they weren't allowed to have any purpose because it was still very patriarchal, sexist, like the gender roles were still really inflexible in the 50s. So yeah, a bunch of women started killing themselves for lack of purpose.
Well, the next question I'm going to go to, and this is where I think this conversation is going to kind of get interesting, is when you start comparing that, say, 1950s woman, or like my mom, right? My mom was a very traditional woman, although she did work. My generation was the first latchkey kids. You know, we're the first kids where mom went to work. And her mom didn't work. Her mom was on the farm. You know, my grandmother was very poorly educated. She was born in the teens, you know, the early part of the 19th century. and like she could cook but barely could read. I mean, she could make anything in the world, like amazing meals, from scratch, the dough, the pie, like make candied food. She used to make jam. Like we used to steal jam from her because she used to make jam. We went down and got 3, 4 bottles of her peach preserves or strawberry jam. It was the best jam in the world. But like a woman today couldn't make jam without YouTube. Whereas my grandmother and my mom were taught that skill generationally, right? So how do you reconcile that change in the standard of women's what they bring to the table? I was watching Fresh and Fit or whatever, and this single mom was on, and this guy and Brian asked her, he goes, "What do you bring to the table as a single mom?" And she didn't. She go, "I'm not going to answer that question." And then when he asked her, I said, "What do you
They think
expect
it's
from?"
like a trick
Right.
question.
And then
it isn't.
and when he said, "Well, what do you expect from it?" She goes,
Pretty basic.
"Consistency." All she listed all these things, right? And there was a conservative woman on the cast, and she goes, "You don't think men want them too?" Right? And I thought
Well, asking what you bring to the table is a gender neutral
Yeah.
question. The question applies just as, like, the
Equally.
metaphor, the image is of a man and a woman sitting opposite each other at a table, and they're both putting, like, it's completely neutral, fair, and equal. It's unfortunate that it's being used so aggressively by some of the more egregious players in the red pill community. So now I think a lot of women just have it programmed in their head that if they hear that question, it's coming from like some red pill bad faith actor, and it's like
It's a
that's
setup.
unfortunate because actually it's exactly, it's a setup, and it shouldn't be a setup. You should have, like, even if you think it's a setup, the way you blow up the setup from inside is you treat the question as genuine,
As
and
legitimate.
you just
Right.
describe exactly, you just treat
my
it literally,
question,
and you just say, well, I'm a great cook, I'm a really empathic person, I'm fun to be around, I have lots of friends, and I have my own hobbies, so I'm not going to be like all up in your shit. Like, anyone can say these things.
right? So my question then, based off of this setup, and I'm going to start with Seth, is when you were courting your wife, did you guys have a conversation around expectations? Whereas, and I'm going to use myself first while you think about the question. When me and my wife decided to get married, right, we had a real serious talk. I said, "Okay, look, you're 40 years old, over 40 years old. You've raised 3 kids. They're brilliant. You've got a career. You're a scientist. You're a cytogeneticist. You've got your shit together. I'm not going to start telling you what to do. You're an adult. But you're not going to say things to me like, well, why'd you let me do that? Because I'm going to say, you're a fucking adult who made a stupid decision. And that's never going to be a fair answer to your wife, right? So I said, if I'm going to be held accountable for the decisions, I get to make them. But in that conversation, I said to her, understand, there's only like 5 things I care about. What I sleep on, my toys. And all men have toys, whether it's cars, guitars, computers, guns. Every guy's got a toy that he plays with. Where he lives and what he drives. It's about the only thing, and what he eats. That's the 5 things men care about. Beyond that, if she wants to change the furniture, paint the house, whatever it is that she wants to do, I generally have no care, right? I don't have a complaint.
Here's the counter: when she moves the utensils every other week,
Okay.
and you're trying to open the utensils drawer. I'm just saying.
Okay, so there can.
In theory, you're going to have, between the two of
Concessions.
you, and you're going to have some kind of way, like some kind of frame that you can both slip into when you're talking about your relationship, where you can actually work through these kind of many minor problems. I mean, it's not difficult.
These aren't just minor problems. These are establishing.
Well, if you let them go,
oh yeah,
break
they're
up
huge.
a marriage.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
here's the thing: is if you don't establish a hierarchy in your relationship, And it's not a hierarchy. And here's the thing: I don't necessarily believe to be a hierarchy of gender. I think it's a hierarchy of competence in a specific arena. As an example, when it comes to my health, when it comes to the medicines I take, the food I eat, the vitamin supplements I take, I defer 100% to my wife, as she is an absolute expert in the field. If she puts it in my pill bottle, I'm fucking swallowing it. I have no idea what I'm taking half the time. I just know my wife says I should have it, and I'll take it. Now, could she be poisoning me? Sure. But I don't believe that because I know she loves me without condition. So I am of the belief, and I wanted you to kind of hear my setup, Seth, because I know you guys have a very unique, or a unique dynamic in your relationship. Because nobody in the world who knows Stallings would ever accuse him of being effeminate. Like, there's nothing about him that's feminine. You know, I guarantee you. Leave the ponytail alone, buddy. I guarantee you.
Go back to 1820; it'll be fine.
Yeah, I guarantee you. There's
I'm
not.
posting a picture from 1850 as we speak.
Right.
Actually,
And
it's, yeah.
the thing with Seth is, I know that there's no man that would be around him that would think they could, in any way, shape, or form, accost him, push him over, bully him. That he doesn't put forth an effeminate vibe. So he's very much a man's man. Like, that's. But his relationship dynamic is like one of the stories he told us that cracks me up. He's like, came home from work. My wife's mad because she broke her fingernail cleaning her shotgun. And I'm like, oh, that's fucking hilarious. But on the same token, they have a very non-traditional hierarchy in their relationship, and I'm curious as to how that came about. So, with that much setup, you have the mic.
So there was never a discussion. We were 20, but I had the benefit of skipping a lot of the beginning rituals and relationship parts that people, when people date, you're getting to know them, right? You're seeing if you're compatible. You're checking hobbies and meeting family. I got to fast forward through all that because she was genuinely in my friend group. She was the matriarch of all the women, that were around us back when we were in bands and playing shows, and so we got to skip a lot. So to answer your question directly, no, we never had a question about hierarchy or anything like that. It's weird when you're saying it out loud that it's a non-traditional relationship. That's weird to hear because it doesn't feel like it's the only one I know. So it's the longest relationship I've had besides some of my friends. But I am notoriously have my same friends since I was a young kid. Like, and it's not because I live in rural anywhere. I live in Dallas, so it's
only 7 million people here.
We're not in traditional times anyways, so
right.
Having a non-traditional relationship in non-traditional times is not that weird.
Sure, but there is some weirdness to it because, like you were mentioning earlier, these what's it called? Parasocial relationships with YouTubers or AI bots or pillows, whatever is happening. To me, I feel more and more traditional the more I keep hearing about some of these.
You're with a real live woman with her own feelings, and she's human and everything. Like in your lifetime, that statement that I just made as obvious half joke hyperbole, that might actually become literal. I mean, who knows?
Well, and honestly, I have a strong wife, and and there's a lot of reasons why we were attracted to each other, from outside of just, physical attraction when we were young, because we knew each other, we trusted each other. Those things are important to most people's relationships. But when it comes to like a hierarchy thing, I've always had I just never really got it. Yet I do like to compliment my wife because she's cool, and she's always been cool. She's always been that person. That wasn't me. I didn't make her cool. Like, she was just already that type of a outdoorsy.
Yeah, you're just noticing.
Smart, empathetic, great cook, best chicken fried venison possible. So to me, all these little roles of women, it's I like to push her. Like, we definitely like to squabble and fight and joke around with each other, but we have the room to do that. And we joke a lot about gender roles and hierarchy stuff. To us, it's funny. And so how that, there's no wisdom in anybody's relationship. It's just if you don't work on it, it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman or a pillow or whatever you're doing. It's never over. It's never a thing you got. It's never a thing you made it. And you're just riding it out. It is constant. It is. We have changed in 20 years. I have definitely changed. So has she. So this idea that where you are in a relationship or you have to establish this or that might change. We might be in 20 years, I might be not allowed to talk in public. I don't know what the rules are going to be. But what's funny, I was going to mention this and I'll let someone else. I gave my wife 2 rules, and verbally multiple times, it's like there's 2 rules in my book. She's abided by them since then. And I know your immediate thoughts are like, oh, this is probably pretty serious. They weren't, but I was very, very adamant that there's 2 rules that if you do these, I know that you still love me. Number 1, anytime Pink Floyd is on the radio, she has to turn it up. You would be surprised how often that happens. Like Pink Floyd's just on the radio, she'll go to a friend's stereo and turn it up. The second one is she's never allowed to share my pillow. She's not allowed to put her head on my pillow. My pillow is my pillow. Now that might sound stupid, but for 2
Some guys
rules,
are like that with their food. So
yeah. So for 2 rules, she's always done it. I always thought they were hilarious, but for 20 years, she's always done that. And then I anytime like there's some like, hey, I'm bigger than you, I get the bigger piece of meat that's left or whatever, she'll get in my face and she'll fight me for it. So because she knows that as long as we are talking or laughing or joking, like it's not so serious. Relationships are serious, but that doesn't mean working on them and expanding on them have to be so defined. It doesn't make any sense. Like
well,
she's
it's always
gotta
a
be a chore.
negotiation, right? Like it's always a negotiation between 2 rational adults, and either one of them, either person in a relationship at any time can pull the plug and say, I'm out of here. So both of you have ejector seats. Both of you have safety nets. So once you both realize that, then it's just a negotiation. And it's like you can look to traditional gender roles just as like a set of ideas where it's like, and then you're just like cafeteria Catholics. You just pick and choose whatever. You can experiment, because at the end of the day, it's nobody else's fucking business what you do in your relationship except the 2 of you. So, and as long as the outcomes are good, if the outcomes are good, then what's the problem? Like if you're both paying your taxes, going to work, you're stable in every sense of the word, you have kids, the kids turn out good, then I'm results. I'm very pragmatic, results oriented. Whatever you did to get there, good. It obviously worked.
Fly.
Let me add one real quick. I know in sales, like I was always told, like the sign of a good deal is that both parties are pissed off, right? Because that way you really did compromise because you neither got really what you wanted. And I've thought about that a lot because I've been in sales my whole life, and I love talking to people, and I've never had any weirdness with communicating or trying to communicate. But I say that only because this is the only example, the relationship with my wife, that's not that. I know it's cheesy, the whole happy wife, happy life thing. I hate hearing that too, but in reality, it's true. And so in reality,
well, here, let's reframe it and let's make it
happier.
Let's make it gender neutral.
I'm happier, and it just works. So
yeah, make it gender neutral. The happy wife, happy life thing is half correct. It's the correct way to put it, because this is gender neutral. This works for homosexual couples, trans, whoever. Is that the relationship is as happy as its least happy member. To me, that's the way you put it. It's your relationship is as happy and as functional and as healthy as its least happy, least functional and healthy member. So if you're both functional and happy, then it's functional and happy. And if one of you is slightly less than the other, but you're both still well in the functional and happy range, it's not a competition. You're fine.
So, like, there's a joke, that I've kind of spun out, and I'm going to grab Fly because I do want his opinion. Happy wife, happy life, happy husband, happy home. And the joke is that's the geography you affect. A man affects the 2,000 square feet around him. If he's got a problem and he's in Tokyo and he calls his wife, he's got a problem. But if he's in Tokyo and his wife has a problem, he has a problem. So her she affects your whole life, whereas men affect the 2,000 feet around them. So there. I think
That's the
there's
traditional. That's the traditional view.
But-
Yeah, all that is a traditional unpacking of the basic
some,
principle.
right. But
But I mean, the
but I
basic
agree.
principle affects.
It's both sides.
non-traditional as well.
You know, at the end of the day, you have to have the interest and wherewithal to want your mate to be happy, also. Not
Well,
just
and you don't need, and you don't want to judge it, right?
Right.
Like in the sense of.
So let's Fly answer before we go into a rabbit hole. Go ahead, Fly.
Yeah, I just believe that here you are. You bring in two people who's probably raised up, different views, different viewpoints. And you're bringing these two people together, and to me, I just feel like you don't go looking for stability in your partner, just like you don't go looking for stability in a relationship or in the job or in the bank account. And if we'll depend on anything or anyone in our external world to bring us permanent stability, we're constantly going to be living in fear or losing our security. So you have to, here we go again, right back to the energy thing. That person that fit your energy, you would have.
Well, I want to add to that. My supervisor at work is a. I'm not going to dox her, but she's a lovely lady. I'm not going to guess her age, but she has a 25-year-old son, and she's single. And she mentioned just in a meeting. So I mean, she was obviously comfortable expressing it in front of all of us. But she had mentioned that she is taking her one of her girlfriends convinced her to take dance lessons with her, like a tango class or something, just to get in touch with her feminine energy. And because she's been single for a while, and she, by her own, like, she just described herself openly as masculine, and said that it was getting in the way of her dating life. And I was just like, it was kind of like an excited utterance, and it was just kind of interesting. Like, there's a lot of people are talking a lot these days on, like, both sides, however you choose to divvy people up by politics or whatever. I'm just going to generalize and say a lot, like, I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of people are talking about feminine and masculine energy, and not in some woo Deepak Chopra way, but just as a low resolution descriptor of, I guess you would say, just like, I don't know what it is. Like, the last girl that I dated ticked off every single one of my boxes, and some that I didn't even know that I had. But ultimately, the one thing that I couldn't get over was that she was like a man. Like, she wouldn't be collaborative with me. She was always competing with me, even about things where it didn't make sense to compete, like income. She was pissed that she made more money than me. And I'm like, but you have no equity. I own my home. Like, why aren't you thinking in terms of you bring a little more money, but I'm bringing $500,000 equity, so I've got the down payment? Like, it's totally equal. Why aren't you? She never thought what our incomes and worth could do together. She only ever thought about, like, when she found out that I owned my own place, her response, rather than being excited, was to become wildly jealous. And she was going to pull $100,000 from her RRSPs out of the bank so she could go buy a place, just so that I couldn't, like, have that one up on her. And to me, that and a bunch of other things, like, she had a messy house, she was really overtly sexual and weird, but it was so, it was like, it was masculine, but it was like she had the energy of like a 20-year-old, like a stereotypical young, dumb, and full of cum 20-year-old dude who's not that bright. But she was really smart. But she had no feminine energy whatsoever. And I didn't know until that time that all of the women I had dated previously and had relationships with were actually somewhat traditionally feminine. I don't think about those terms. I don't care. But it was the first time when I was with a woman who, so just to put a button on it, she gave me a lift home once because she wanted to show off her her fancy sports car that's this huge money pit, but she loves driving fast and she likes her sports cars. And we're driving along the highway. A Mustang is in the right-hand lane beside us, and she starts revving her engine, looking past me because I'm in the passenger seat, and she's telling me, roll down your window. And I'm like, why? She's like, I want to race him. She's a 35-year-old woman who makes $90,000 a year working for the government, like writing their websites and stuff. And she's literally trying to drag race a couple of 20-year-old dudes in a Mustang on the highway at night in order to impress me, a 40-something-year-old or white-collar office worker. I was just like, what are you doing? Like,
But
it
you
was
have
just the weirdest thing. And so now I know, you're like, I'm just going to use these low-resolution terms and say you are operating in a masculine energy. Because all of that, it was like hanging with one of my bros, except that you're hot and I want to fuck you.
But
But
there's
weird
a
and
war.
confusing.
There's a war on relationships. You know, heterosexual relationships. And I know you guys can see that. If you can
Well,
see,
we
you can
also
see it.
accidentally,
And then there's also a war on women.
Oh yeah.
There's
okay,
a war
but
on
we
women
also,
too.
we accidentally made this, right? We went from telling women that, okay, so like quick history, World War II, women come out of the home, go into the factories, go into the workplace for the first time. Women discover that they can actually do a lot of the jobs of men, do them quite well. They develop their own autonomy and their own sense of power. They get their own money. 1950s comes around.
Right.
They all get thrown back into the kitchen. They're told, no, that was just an aberration of history. Don't mind that. Forget everything that you just learned in the last 5 years because of World War, blah, 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 blah. All right? Like, we always do these big overcorrections. So anyways, then we go into the third wave feminism, 60s and 70s, girl power movement. Let's correct that because that's obviously stupid. Let's bring women into the workplace. Also, that way they can be taxed, and it's an easier way to control everyone. But like, I don't think it was malevolent. Like, it was an obvious pendulum swing going the other way from like the kind of Victorian birdcage thing they were doing in the 50s. So it's like, but the problem was that in pumping them up, so what we told them, you can do everything that men can do, you're just as good as men, blah 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 blah. And it seems to me what we kind of accidentally did was we said, go be men.
So my wife,
like in every sense.
My wife, one of the things that my wife pointed out to me, and she's conveyed this to me on multiple occasions. She's like, men and women, and when she was a teenager, men didn't want girls to be girls. They picked on them for being girly. They trained women to be masculine.
But that's often how men simply show affection when they don't know how. Like boys yanking a girl's hair because he likes her.
But the thing is, we created the conditions for the outcomes that we're getting now. So men don't get to say that, girls are acting like men. No. You trained them when they were teenagers.
Well, we get to say it.
Yeah,
but we can't say it as though we're not part of the problem.
Right. That was my point. And I want to get us back into topic for a minute because I don't think Phil had a chance to speak. Phil, in your personal life, I don't know your relationship background, etc. You have thoughts to add to this about the type of women that are being produced today? Like you're in the dating world, or you might be sticking your toe into the dating world. I know you are looking for a Jewish woman that's gonna fit into your criteria.
Like you just labels.
Well, dude, I was trying to hook you up with one of my kids.
Judaism, by the
I
way.
know. I was trying to hook him up with one of my daughters. Like, Phil, you'd be perfect. And he's like, oh, she's not a Jew. I'm like, oh, damn it.
Can she pass a really tough test?
That's a very low resolution answer that I gave.
I know, it's kind of funny.
It's gotta be a Jew. Yeah, you sound pretty orthodox.
Like, she's not Jewish enough. You don't know how to make baklava.
She only nagged me twice in the past 30 seconds. That ain't good.
I think there's a couple things that came to mind just in reference to the previous conversations, and I think I might need to, I'm in that stage where, to some degree, I don't look where most people look. Like, I guess that's a kind of a good rule of thumb. But I guess to ask the married men or people who've been in relationships, I find that a lot of the failed relationships that I see in my own age and people in their 30s is that they allow these small little things to build up over time. And let's say, as an analogy, you're at a restaurant and your boyfriend is hitting on the waitress, right? Well, I don't see her saying anything to him on the spot or right after they leave the restaurant. I see that happening a lot later after it's happened multiple times, and then you see it all blow up all at once, and it makes this massive divide between the partners. And I don't think that's healthy. And I think that can also, if it's on the reverse side, I think if that continues, then he just keeps going further away and ends up becoming the ultimate betrayal, and cheats on the relationship. And so then I don't think that's good. I think there's a nice little median where you always bring up the things that make you annoyed, or that, I don't want to say rub you the wrong way, but without the lack of a better thought process, that and talk about those things that you don't like in your partner. Do you have to do that, and how often, and has that been beneficial?
So Phil brings up some really interesting, and I want to actually snatch that out and see each person's opinion, especially Mr. Stallings. Phil said something, and I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." He's like, if your mate flirts with a woman, right? And I'm glad you picked the guy first, but also thought immediately when you said that why there are women who garner or look for the attention of other men, and whether it be on social media, whether it be amongst your group. Oh, they go up and they're overly excited to see your friend John, right? They're always trying to make sure John's having a good time. And it could 100% be innocent, right? But like my wife,
No.
hold on, my wife does not keep male friends. Like, she has one or two that are my friends first. That
That's because she's a married woman. She shouldn't have a bunch of.
Okay,
well,
so
that becomes hold on. That becomes part of this question. Alex says like, yeah, brah. So
I would think it weird.
I think it's an interesting caveat in this discussion of women that when you become a mate of someone, when you become entwined in a relationship with another person, does relationships of the opposite sex become taboo? Seth?
Well, don't say taboo, but just say are they affected? Sure. How much?
This is we get this question a lot. We both have a lot of friends of the other sex. We go hang out with them. My wife will go to a bar, catch up with her guy friends. Like I have a lot of female musicians that I work with by myself for hours, and I've had this from friends. Like, is no one says anything? It's like, no, dude. Like, first of all, you're missing the most important part of it is trust.
Trust.
That's it. You don't have to go past that. I trust my wife 100%. Now, if I am the gullible male idiot that didn't realize it for 20 years and she has another family, then so be it. Because I would rather live a life of trust than mistrust. And I have seen a lot of friends' relationships not have that, or men are very protective. I had this girl singer, real cute, young, super cool. We went to school together in North Texas too, and she was over here, but her husband needed to be here as well. Forever, for like maybe a year, maybe 5 or 6 sessions, he would hang out in the adjacent room and we would record. To me, I was extremely uncomfortable because he was uncomfortable, and it made me mad. Like, I was like, dude, don't flatter yourself. I'm a happily married man. We're here for music, and it's nothing that. But seeing it was weird. It was weird because it was weird to them. So I'm bringing that up because not a year after that, they divorced. They're split. They're done. So
my question was, does she like it? Because some women like that, but if she doesn't like that, then they're not going to last because that's really controlling.
Sure, my wife does not care. my wife hangs out with other guys in bars and has her friends. She's had the same childhood friends. I mean, that's so weird that you would, like y'all mentioned, she's a married woman for 20 years and she can't go hang out with another man. Like, I don't understand the reasoning of that. Like, because, and I understand what society would think, but you know, if you've met my wife, it's like, dude, like that's not it at all. Now, I have also
Does she
seen
have female friends though?
she's got tons of friends. My wife's a
Because it's a lot, like, to me, it's not as much that, like, I shouldn't say like that married women shouldn't have guy friends. To me, it's more like I have a lot of suspicion of women that do not have any female friends. The women who only have guy friends, or they only have like one female friend, I'm suspicious of. In my experience, those women have been rejected by the, like, basically by the female community for something, and
So-
it's usually worth knowing. But no, if she has lots of female friends too, then it's totally fine. Well, she was an army brat, so that's like, at the end of the day, we're dealing with these huge generalities. So
Oh yeah.
like, I'm a results oriented person, so if it's like, there's nothing at all suspicious sounding in your, because she was in the Marines, right?
No, she tried, but she was missing her spleen. She couldn't be
Oh.
a Marine.
But she
So,
was like in regular army.
yes.
Yeah. So of course she's gonna have a bunch of freaking guys that she like fought, and like her literal brother. Like that's.
Sorry,
I,
rephrase.
as if I was her husband, that wouldn't threaten me at all. I wouldn't find that weird. That comes
Okay,
with her being a military brat.
Hold on.
let me cut you off. She did. My wife did not do service. She was in ROTC. Was trying to be a Marine. Did not. She was raised by a bunch of Marines. But you know, like so. Like I agree. We're making sweeping generalizations. But when y'all, I'm making only my particular case with me and my wife. That, you know, again, it doesn't matter if it's a husband and husband or gay guy. It doesn't matter if you don't trust the person you're building a life with. Even on a smaller scale, like even like that to answer, I think Phil's question earlier, it does build up over time. Those little things, those little issues that you don't have, that you can't talk about, they do build up. And I also believe that it's a good thing to have debate and conversation. And we fight. Of course we fight. Like, that's a healthy thing, because sometimes you don't realize what's happening. Like, I'm a oblivious person. I don't multitask well. I'm not good at carrying. I can critically think two ideas, and maybe that's it at the same time. But my wife grounds me, because it's a perspective I just don't see, and a lot of times it is her perspective of what's wrong to her. And I'll give you an example, like this, an obvious example. I was at a concert not too long ago. I had this drunk cowgirl, like, just all over me. And my wife came up, and luckily she wasn't packing heat. My wife came up, just grabbed her arm and kind of just moved her arm from me. Never said anything to me, never like chastised me. She's like, that drunk bitch. And then we just walked off and had like a good concert. So it doesn't have to be overcomplicated, right? Some drunk girl was on me, my wife pulled her off and just whatever, and then just went about her day. So, but I will say, and I want to give the example, I think I mentioned before, there was one time where a guy was, you know, something was wrong with him, but he sat down right next to my wife in a movie theater with no other seats around. And I would go and get drinks, and I was coming back, and I see this
That's
big.
never a good sign. It's like somebody sitting next to you on the bus when the bus is empty. You
Right,
know they're
right.
trying to start shit.
Right, he's a big dude. You know, he didn't look old or anything, but maybe, you know, 250, 300 pounds. Sit next to my wife, and I walk up to him, and I lost my shit. Like, I'm not proud of how I reacted to that guy, but enough so where he got bug-eyed and he left the theater. And so my wife was like,
Well,
he
not for
was
nothing. What the fuck is he doing?
really autistic or something. He just wanted to see. I'm like, no, because I was thinking like a guy. I was like, no, that guy was talking to you, and that guy learned his lesson. But to my wife's perspective, it was like, no, he's just some guy. See, like, he didn't do anything. Like, why would you make a big scene? And we had a big fight about that. Like, and to
Tell your
y'all,
wife that you were correct and she's wrong.
I-
100% for the record. I support you, bro.
why that conversation still
Like,
arguments still
in
exist.
0 universes out of infinite, did that guy just randomly, was he just gonna sit there and enjoy the movie and not fuck with her at all? Yeah, right. Come on.
Right.
Come on.
All right, Fly.
To my, is that
That's
she,
a beautiful thing, though. Your wife sounds lovely.
my wife is like,
very-
my wife can take care of herself. That's her
Yeah,
opinion.
that
She's like,
too, right? I guess she's just comfortable.
yeah,
So
she's
Fly,
not
what
her skin.
what about you, buddy? What do you think, Fly?
Hey, one of the main things you have to trust that the person that you're with. I mean, if you got a hoe, you know if you got a hoe or not, right? Let's be real.
So-
You can't.
Hoes be hoes, baby.
No, real. Right? Let's be real. You met her and she was a whore, and you marry her, she's still a whore. Right? Right? So I like what he said, man. It's trust. He been with her. They trust each other. He know what he have. You already know what you have, and so that's where the trust come in. You have to worry about, damn, she gonna fuck off on me or anything like that. That's beta energy.
So
I never worry that like I've never
But
had
there's
I've never had trust issues like in worrying about my woman cheating on me. I don't think I've ever been cheated on. If I have, I've never even had an inkling. So I've never worried about that. The worry I always have for my partners is them embarrassing me. That's always my big concern and my big challenge with my partner is just them like being around my intelligent friends or around my sophisticated family and them saying something that just makes me go, oh fuck.
But
Like them trying to recount a news article.
you don't want to
and
be
just getting it all
judged for
wrong.
their. You don't want
But
to be
here's the
judged
deal.
for it.
Yeah, I don't want to feel
Yeah.
responsible. Yeah.
If a man saw you with your woman, you walk off and go and went to the restroom or go get drinks or whatever, and he saw you with her, and you come back, he's sitting there trying to talk. That's totally disrespectful.
Oh no, that's.
I would check his
I'd
ass.
react.
Yeah,
there'd be worse.
I would check his ass. It's nothing against the woman. I would check his ass right off the muscle because I was like, because it's totally disrespectful. I was like, what the hell you doing,
I
hey,
don't-
boy? You
I
doing
wouldn't
you?
take it as a disrespect to me because he doesn't know if she has a partner. I would just
But
be
he
like,
saw
what?
you with
He saw
her.
him
He
get
saw
up
you
and
with
leave.
her.
He saw him
Still.
go get food.
Well, like in what universe do you just call? I would just call it out immediately what it is. I would say, in what universe does a strange man come and sit next to a lone woman in an empty movie theater? Dude, you are being that guy. Just go, like get out. Like
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
ridiculous.
Okay, so
That part.
I'm with Fly because I don't know that I would have been anywhere near polite. I know me when it comes to my wife and my response to people about with my wife. It's like there's no limit to the level of violence I will inflict on her behalf.
Just
Like,
remember that
there's
your first
none.
reaction would be, I'm sure, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Seth, but your first reaction immediate was probably just shock. Like, in the sense of, like, because it's the last thing you would ever expect to see when you come back with the food is that some huge random dude is sitting next to your wife in an empty movie theater. Like, what the fuck? Am I being punked?
It was an immediate problem walking all the way
Right?
up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Was
like, dude, I would have physically laid my hands on him. Did you lay your hands on him?
I wouldn't have. I would have just started yelling at him immediately. Like, what the actual fuck?
I know how to hit somebody, and I was ready. But
Oh yeah, I would have
No.
been. He would have physically
Yeah,
moved.
use your
I wouldn't
words
been
first,
nice.
but yeah,
I mean, I would have told him. I would look him right in his eyes and say, "Man, you really need to move because right now it's going to get real personal." And we can do it three ways, right? We can do it like A, gentlemen. We can do it B, gorillas, or we can do it like C, gangsters. Your choice. Your fucking choice. It's time to leave.
no, my exact words were "get the fuck up," and then he looked at me. His eyes were all shocked. I said, "Get the fuck!" And my wife started like, "Hey, like what? He's just chilling." And then I'm like, "Get the fuck!" And I'm kind of over him. And so, and then once he started moving and kind of walking down the aisle, my wife is like, "He just wanted to sit in the middle of the screen." I go, "There's 8 rows empty in front of us." You know, like I'm not an idiot. You know, at the same time,
well,
but
yeah, like that's so weak.
I have not been in the
weakest
dating.
excuse.
I have not been in the dating scene since I was 19. So I also don't know how men approach women. And maybe he did. Maybe I wasn't there when he sat down. So
It's still the same way. If they see an attractive woman, the place is empty. Hey, I'm gonna say maybe I can strike a conversation. It's still the same,
I'm
dude.
gonna
You
get
never
anywhere.
stop.
I
Okay,
overcorrected.
but you sit behind her, or if you're really smart, you sit in front of her because that's less threatening.
You think?
And that way, and then like just in a like you let a few minutes go by, you see she's not doing anything or busy, and you just lean over and be like, you think this movie's going to be any good, and then you start talking. Then if she's giving you good signals, then maybe you get up and go and take a seat next to her. But like you don't just like fuck no. No one's done that in the history of ever thinking that was a
But
smooth move.
women and men minds, we live in totally, even though
Yeah.
we come together as one world, we live in totally different worlds.
Oh yeah,
to
100%.
certain things in relationships.
It is amazing, right? Like she honestly, and this is no insult to your wife. I'm sure she's insightful and smart and all that. But I mean, there's
She's
different
oblivious.
frames of seeing. She really didn't see what was immediately obvious to you and all the dudes in this room, which is like, no, that's a problem. That's not. No, there's no innocent reason for that. That's a problem.
I want to
Unless
inject
he's
on that.
actually mentally. If you start talking to him and his like you
He's
can tell
unstable.
he's just not all there. Exactly, he's disabled. He's on the spectrum or something. Then it's like, oh, whoa, okay. Oh, hey, how's it going, buddy? Like, because then you don't want to. No, you
Right,
don't want
you're
to.
not trying. Right. But so
You don't want to be that guy.
the thing about
But
it
that's
is, though,
highly unusual.
the thing about it is men and women view things differently, and I wanted to bring. This is the last point for. We're gonna run out of time. We'll pick this topic up again. I know. And I think it's been a really good discussion.
Kind of a big topic, right?
Oh yeah, it's huge.
50% of the species.
Right.
51.
But I think
50,
there's something
54,
to be said
54, 50.
about Seth's reaction has to do with a very primal programming that men are programmed to be the defender, we're programmed to be the hunter, we're programmed, and we're the single greatest resource procurement species ever produced in the history of the world. Everything's a resource to men: sex, love, money, food, shelter, and we have the ability to acquire all these things independently. So when we see another male, and if you look at it, lions do the same thing. When there's another male coming in to try and get a female, the immediate response is, "I'm going to go fuck you up," and that's exactly Seth's response to another predator coming near his.
It's a male. It's specific, like male on male aggression is built in. We channel
Everything.
it through competition. We channel it in healthy ways now through competition. But yeah, like just a general aggression towards other men is, yeah. I mean, we see that in like most of the mammalian species. That's very, very common. And
That's
then,
a hardwire.
so,
That's in our DNA.
yeah, and to me, that's
So
that's
I think Seth I think Seth acted
I'm for that.
100% within what. And again, we've got 5 men in this
Well,
room,
I don't-
and not
I
one
don't
of us
want-
didn't see his wife's point of view.
I don't see, like, here's a thought. It's just like I don't. I was thinking about this the other day because I was trying to like break the rule, come up with the exception, and I couldn't think of anything but the most like extreme or esoteric examples. But like as a really general rule, I do not think that encouraging any kind of aggression, however you define it, between the sexes is a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't think that having women compete against men in sports is a good idea. Like even mixed doubles, to be honest, like it's fine, it's a tradition. But when you see, what's his name, that 6'11" American tennis player who can serve at like 160 miles per hour, serve against a female tennis player, she ain't hitting that back. She can't even see it. I mean, it's just so but anyways, that was like one of the exceptions I came up with was mixed doubles in tennis, and I'm like, well, and that does seem to be okay. But at the same time, it still has its absurd moments, and mixed running as well. But but that's like healthy competition. But just as a general rule, I do not think that's why I don't like men hitting women. I don't like women hitting men, and it just if there was a parity between the sexes, then maybe it would be more tolerable. But there are biological differences that
are gigantic.
affect. Well, yeah, and they affect they affect the ultima ratio, which is our ability to do harm to others, which is one of the most important things that needs to be not ignored. So I just really don't see, like when I see, for example, when I see a woman being unreasonable in a social situation, and another woman comes over and like sets her straight, that's what I want to see. And when I see a man being unreasonable in a social situation, I want to see a man come over and set him straight. I think it's just better for. It's why I really love female police officers. Like the more, the better. I think having pairs of police officers, one man, one woman, the advantages to me seem so obvious and profound. It's just, I think it's just better to have that. It's just, it's better for women to engage with the bad behavior of other women, and men for the, for the inverse. Not as an absolute, but just, I don't think that having aggression between the sexes is a good idea as a general rule. So yeah, in the case in Seth's case, it's like the fact that like she could have handled it herself, obviously, but the fact that she was clueless about it, and the fact that you handled it, I think that's going to lead to the best outcome if we generalize it to a rule, I think. So I'm happy that happened.
So I'm gonna jump in for a second because I was just considering if my wife was in that situation, and I know my wife really well, and I'm 100% of the belief that if he were to try to sit down, my wife would go, "I'm sorry, that seat's taken."
Yeah,
My
she would say,
husband is sitting
she would
there.
100% say
She
that.
would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
super polite
That's what my
about
mom
it.
would say. My
Right?
mom would say that for sure.
She's a very classy woman. She'll go, "Oh, I'm sorry, that seat is taken," you know, and it would be a rejection that the guy could easily palate
And
with
then
his ego.
and then if he sits down, she gets up.
Oh yeah, she'll move. Right.
That's what my mom would do. If my mom was in that
So
situation where my stepdad was off buying popcorn and some random person of any gender, of whatever, just some random person comes in an empty movie theater and sits right down next to her, she would just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that seat's taken." And then if there were just continued to, if they persisted, she would just get up
and move.
and just go take another seat in the empty movie theater because who gives a fuck? And then when my stepdad comes in, he would see, "Oh, you're one row up now. Okay, whatever." He would just go join her, and then she would just like whisper in his ear what had happened.
You know, he
That'd be
has
it.
a great wife because when he was at the music concert, he said earlier, and the drunk girl was all
That's not
over
a
him.
criticism of your wife,
I
by
mean,
the way. That's just a
and
different
his wife
way.
and the wife just grabbed, put her arm back, pushed the woman arm back, grabbed her husband, and walked. Man, that's awesome. That's right. Because anybody else would be
Well, that's what you want.
goddamn fool, man.
Well, so let's hover on that for a second because it's that inverse thing. So Seth also talked about, yeah, where he's got a drunk woman all over him. So now for Seth to deal with that himself, sure, he can handle it, but there's a potential for something going wrong, for something being misinterpreted. Maybe his hand slips, she lurches forward, all of a sudden the hand's touching a part it shouldn't touch on her, and wow, his wife comes over, deals with it, he doesn't lay a finger on her.
That
Best
was
outcome
fat. That
possible.
was
Boom.
fat.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have a closing. Go ahead.
Real quick,
It's just better for everyone.
I also didn't try to get her off of me immediately. I don't know if there's something psychologically with that too. But to your point, it's a woman, and it's like, okay, like, like I'm not throwing her off me. Like if a man gets in your space, it's a different reaction, right? So
Well, and in your heart, I presume, in your heart, you know, like if a drunk, attractive woman is draped on you, you can allow it in two modes. You can allow it in the mode where you're kind of infantilizing her in your head, and you're like, "Oh, she's really drunk." Okay, you can lean on my shoulder. I'm not doing anything. I got a wife, but when she comes, I'll just kind of roll my eyes, and or there's the mode of, well, this is like plausible deniability. Maybe I could accidentally, like, you obviously weren't operating in that mode. So like, I think you were fine. Because I think, like, if you believe in a God, then he saw what was in your heart, and if you don't, well, you know what was in your heart. So good enough. I mean, and your wife obviously didn't doubt. So
We're at an hour and 10 minutes, and I usually try and wrap us up, and that's not because I don't enjoy the conversation. It's because I want to keep our podcast to a reasonable time. And this is a topic we're definitely going to have to continue on because I think there's so much more discussion to be had. And one of the things I want to kind of recap as when we were discussing women today, I think the light that we're attempting to highlight is that our mates in the various forms add to us as men. I think they add to our person. I think they take away. Like with myself, I was, before I met my wife, I was quite hedonistic, narcissistic to an amazing level. I only cared about me. I had been single for 10 years. I did anything I wanted whenever I wanted. I had the means to do anything I wanted. I am very well spoken. I understand people. I was living the proverbial single man's dream, and I was never more miserable for 10 years of my life. And now I've been married 8 into 9, and I couldn't imagine going back to living the way that I did before I met my wife. And it's entirely about the idea that I think your wife forges you in a different way. As a man, you're forged throughout your life, and the parts of you that are unacceptable gets burned off in the fire and tribulations of being a man. And when you meet a good woman, it's a much softer burning because she doesn't do it forcibly. She doesn't do it with manipulation. She does it with her love, her attention. You know, my wife, I tried to break up with her. I'm like, dude, you deserve so much better a person than me. Like, truly, I'm not a good guy. And she's like, no, I see who you really are. You just pretend to be someone else. So I think that your wives tend to inspire us to be the best version of ourselves that we could be. And I think they go about it in very different ways. And I think that's one of the mysteries of our existence and how men and women fit together, because Fly uses the term energy. And I agree with him. We got to have a woman that's energy that matches yours. And with Seth, he's known his wife, and like he said, she was the matriarch of their friend group. So I know a little history with Seth. She was like, they never had like an interest in one another growing up. It wasn't until later in life that they were like, oh, she's kind of fucking hot. I mean, Seth always thought she's hot, right? Because you're a guy and you look at tits, and that's just what we do. You know, he never missed her physique, right? But he never put her on the I'm going to get me some of that as a piece of resource or as a resource for that. So I think part of the same thing with my wife. We were friends, and she was in my book club, and I got to know her as a person long before I looked at her as an object. And men tend to do this. So I think that we can talk and should talk more openly about the positive outcomes of the women of our lives, and how that in as much as women are independent and can do everything a man can do, maybe they just shouldn't. Maybe there should be, and I know there's a conservative movement amongst women, like truly. My wife was talking about the other day that, more and more women are being interested in, being feminine again. And there's a feminine movement going on, which I think is great, but it's one towards traditional femininity. So I think we
Well,
should.
there's lots of movements going on.
Yeah.
Like even on the left side, even on the leftist side that doesn't believe in those traditional gender roles, women, um, like the woman I mentioned at work, who's very leftist. Women are
Oh, I'm trying to be a
showing,
girl.
well, they're showing interest in finding their feminine energy. So it's interesting that they reject these, even saying feminine and masculine energy. That's, I don't know what, it's interesting because that's just using different words to talk about really traditional gender roles. So I don't think they've thought too hard about it. Like if you break down what masculine and feminine energy is in terms of its performative behaviors, you're going to have a gendered list that is going to just sound like classic traditional gender roles. So yeah, I don't know, but but at the same time, like we can't go back. You know,
Right.
um,
It's finding it's taking from the past the best parts and
well, and
implementing it
it's
into the future.
the best part of feminism in my view is the third wave, and a part of what third wave feminism did, they were the ones who, for example, calculated the amount of unearned labor that was being done by housewives. For example, they did all the calculations on that and shocked the world by letting us know. And of course, these calculations continue to get updated and continue to get more and more shocking. Like to be a mother, like in terms of like hiring a surrogate and then hiring a full-time nanny and all the support staff. So if you're going to, like, what is the market value of a mother, of a
Oh
stay-at-home
yeah, it's
mom?
$1,000 a week.
Oh, it's more than that. Yeah, it's a lot. It depends. Of course, it depends on where you want to set the bar in terms of your own affluence. But it's a lot. And so I think that, and so those calculations were all done in the late '60s and early '70s to show to make the Western patriarchal world appreciate how, like, just in a financial sense, I think because men are so driven by like metrics and values and numbers. Like, hey, your stay-at-home wife is actually like
Very
she's
valuable.
producing an incredible amount of value, that if you didn't have her and you still wanted that outcome of having a happy stable family life, like, it would cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And that was a great point. And also, of course, they pointed out a lot of the psychology and other things that have shown us the benefits of having stable two-parent households and a strong masculine and feminine role model and all that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I think, and then fourth wave feminism came along, which has kind of gone all off the rails. So I think more and more what we're finding on the left are people, they're like, the leftist women aren't going to suddenly become tradcon, although you'll get a few who will jump ship and try the opposite just for the fun of it. But instead, I think what they're doing is they're going back to third wave feminism and feminists like Gloria Steinem, and they're finding that ultimately, I think, like, feminism really nailed it in third wave, because they were the ones who also said that feminism is about the right to make choices. So I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be about shoulds. Unless the should is that you should make the most informed choice that's most congruent with your own understanding of your own unique inner nature. And that's, I think, hopefully where the like, for the conservative women, for a bunch of them to go tradcon, it's totally fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. What if that's what they honestly enjoy, I know they will find lots of men who honestly will enjoy being with them. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing for the leftist women to get spooked about, because as far as I can see, they're doing their own, like, reversion, because they've tried being completely masculinized to the point of, like, drinking like a man, like a stereotypical man, swearing like a stereotypical man, whoring like a stereotypical man, all these things that, like, your stereotypical
Tattoos.
sailor did. Yeah, tattoos, the whole, yeah, the masculine haircuts, the whole bit. They've tried all that, and for some of them it worked, but I think for the vast majority of them it didn't. It just had well, we'll make it about outcomes. It hasn't produced the outcomes that they desire.
Yeah.
And as they're entering their kind of 30s and 40s, they're they're being open-minded enough to see, like, and maybe there's just, like, the angle from the left. If the angle from the right is like the tradcon, then the angle from the left is, like, using the word energy, because they're all into, like, new age spiritualism and manifestation and stuff, like words like that. So if you make it masculine and feminine energy, it doesn't sound religious. So they're like, oh, okay, I can go for it. Energy sounds quasi-science. It's like a Deepak Chopra word. So I don't know. That sounds unkind, but like, at the end of the day, I don't care. Like, I'm not judging the mechanism. I'm just happy because, as somebody who was with, like, my last dating relationship was with a woman who, in hindsight, I realized, like, I didn't know that I was a fairly traditionally masculine guy until her, because, like, I just couldn't handle the fact that she wasn't trying to collaborate with me at all. She was competing with me and aggressive with me, and she couldn't turn it off. She was like some day trader stockbroker guy, you know, who's just like, oh, just like so competitive and wild on the floor, and then he can't turn it off when he gets home, you know, and he's insufferable. She was like that, and it's just like, so it was just, to me, that's just an obvious product of some of that pendulum swinging too far in the other direction, saying you can be like guys. It's like, it doesn't mean you should be like guys. If you want to, if you honestly want to, if you think that's a good idea, then by all means go for it. That's what freedom is. But don't do it just because some guys did it and you feel that means that you should do, like a lot of these movies now where they're remaking movies and they're gender swapping characters, you know, and it's like, but they're putting the female characters through all the same beats, and it's like, just because the guys did it, that's not really empowering. Like, don't do things just because guys have done it. You know, only
Yeah, 'cause
do it if it's a good idea.
We make stupid decisions a lot. We make stupid decisions a lot. So
yeah, and so like, just make sure you're not doing it just because you think, oh, freedom. All those guys acted terribly and ruined their lives with alcoholism, for example. Well, now it's my turn, baby. Like, no, learn from be better than us. Don't be stupid like us. Why would you do that? Be the smarter sex, for the love of God.
Phil,
Anyways, I'll leave it there.
Phil, your closing thought on today. Summary, whatever you want to say. I'm open to your thoughts.
I think the comedic part, I think it was either Bill Burr in reference to, you know, women are actually the smarter sex, and yet they envy men. And so, but they envy the men who are in the bar, like, hey, you go, like the football, you know, like just cheering the football guys, you know, that are like bouncing beer bellies and, you know, down in shots, you know, and you're losing to that. So
These guys are losers.
yeah. So I think there's a lot of good that came out of the conversation, and it was helpful. So I appreciate it.
Fly?
Oh yeah, man. Hey, when we realized that the male is made of an X and Y chromosome, and a woman is X and X, that all males have women in us, and I do agree that can you imagine if the woman, the feminine energy, ruled the world from even back centuries ago until now? How her story, it wouldn't be his story, it'd be her story would be rewritten. But yes, I think we both need each other to equal each other out, man.
Seth?
Yeah, I this was a good conversation. Kind of let me take a step back in perspective. You know, I would agree. Gender roles, sweeping generalizations of gender roles are tricky because we can punch holes in them with almost every woman I've ever met. And you know, I think my wife said this yesterday. That's why I wanted to say it. She goes, you know, strong men sometimes, you know, to be really strong is how they treat a woman. You know, that's how a lot of women see strength. Strength in being emotionally intelligent, strength in being empathetic, and you know, showing more than we think. So when we started this conversation, what men think masculinity means, I asked my wife, you know, what do women think that masculinity is? And same thing we kind of did. Is there any trait that you would take out? And we kind of went down that path. And it always kind of came back to lack of trust between other men, you know, men and men, and just trying to be the protector when you don't need protection. But she ultimately kind of agreed. She's like, there's all the traits that are masculine are good things. So I asked her the flip. Were there any traits of being, you know, a feminine modern woman that you would change? And she kind of went back a little. I was surprised, some conservative values. She's like, you know, I wish respect and trust and manners were more prevalent than they were even when we grew up in the 90s. And
Class.
So class, yeah, and just respect in general to humans. So from a woman's perspective, she said, you know, it might take a strong man to deal with a strong woman, but does it take a very weak man to deal with a very weak woman? And why would a man want a weak, submissive person? What do they gain from it? Is it power? And she brought up a good point. You know, it's like, okay, well, this idyllic, what y'all say, uh, 50s birdcage woman, domestic housewife. You know, I like that comparison because it's true, and it's like, well, did men need women to be that role because they probably the greatest generation ever and dealt with more things that we could ever have the perspective on, and in the future, what does that look like for women? What do we want for the young women and women of the generations coming up? And you know, y'all said it earlier, and it is opportunity, but she didn't say equality. She said basically equity and what that person provides and should be the same. And we got on the payroll gap thing, and I know that's maybe a conversation for another time. But there are, even with a strong woman like my wife, there are a lot of concerns from her position as a woman, a modern woman, and that's something I would like to explore a lot more because it ends up becoming political, but not starting from a political place, right? So anyway, I wanted to take from this conversation y'all's perspectives because talking to some of my younger or single men, I'm like, y'all are stronger than you think because I rely so heavy, if I really think about it, on what my wife does for me in my life, my psyche, my drive, my ambition, my like you know throughout Isaac Newton, some of the philosophers, and it's the same thing. Like if a woman either doesn't or doesn't improve your life, then that's your answer. It doesn't mean that you have to have it. Doesn't mean that society has to have it. We can have a bunch of lone Sigma wolves running out there causing havoc. We can. There's nothing against that, but we should remember that it's not just the percentage of the population, but we are not as good and strong as we think we are solo without women. We are better and stronger because of women.
I agree.
And so I'd like to explore this topic more too, and how a woman's perspective moving forward. So I feel like I'm learning a lot. I love these conversations. Sorry, I've been out for a while. We have been traveling a lot, but hopefully we can continue this deeper.
We will definitely do that. And I'm going to close this off with a spin off of my friend Stallings here because I agree. I think that men and women as a group, you know, the XY chromosome, there's a woman and a man, but there's not a man and a woman, which I think that's a really important thing to consider. That women bring a very specific quality to the world, and that quality generally inspires men. Like my wife, it's funny. It's like I have the vernacular to keep up with the most educated men, and
A
I
lot of the
do
best
so.
artists had muses. A lot of
Right.
the best writers,
So
John Keats, or sorry, Yeats and Keats, I think both had muses.
so I find my and I swear a lot. It's also being from Baltimore. Baltimore, fuck is used by every CEO in the area. They all speak that way. It's just that's the culture there. But when I got here in Texas, you don't say fuck around women. It's wrong, and you get into a fist fight if somebody gets too offended by it. And that's the area that I live in currently. But the funnier thing is that my wife, when I had asked her, you know, before we did the masculinity, what it should look like, or her definition, right? She goes, I don't want to tell you. I was like, well, why? And she goes, because I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I thought about it for a minute. What do you mean hurt my feelings?
You don't measure up, honey. We're gonna go
Yeah,
divorce.
like that's exactly her concern was she didn't really want to tell me how she felt, and that's why when she wrote what she did and I read it on the thing, she said to not unnecessarily offend, right? And that is like she's such a classy woman, and the way she presented that, it struck a nerve with me. So I've been trying to be more conscientious of my vulgarity, because her father didn't swear around her, never, not once. And I know she's told me that, but I just dismissed the information and just went on about saying terrible shit because that's my vernacular, and I'm not going to
When
change
she
how I
told you
speak.
that, that was the first. That's how a good wife
Oh
softballs
yeah.
in the first suggestion. Maybe tone down the language before she actually says, maybe tone down the
No,
language. That's
she'll.
how a good woman just tries to ease
Well,
it in. You know, my dad never swore at the table. That's her way of telling you, don't swear at the table.
but like the thing about it is, I'll give you an example, and this is an entirely.
A good woman can really make no higher appeal, I think, in those sorts of situations to her own father. And
Oh
if she's
yeah,
a good woman,
and she
there's a
loved her
good
daddy. She was a daddy's
yeah, there's a
girl,
good chance that she has a strong relationship with her dad, and
and
yeah, so
it was
that
like,
that that it's like that's basically her way of saying, oh, my dad wouldn't
well,
approve of what you're doing.
so the funny thing is, like, she loves when I prayed for us at night before bed or before work. She's like, that is probably, in her mind, she said to me, one of the most masculine things I do is I pray with my wife before we go to bed. And I lead in that regard. And that is such a peculiar thing because prayer for me has always been very, very private and very, very personal because my relationship with my God is mine. It's not on display for the rest of the world. So, but it's a unique experience that brings me to my final point that women really appreciate the gentleness that is embedded in men in regards to them. We take care of them, we protect them. You take the biggest, roughest guy in the world, and he's got a 6-year-old little girl that's gonna have tea time with him. Dude, he's sitting there in a chair that's 10% the size of him, waiting for her to make imaginary tea and bring it to him, and he enjoys every drop of the imaginary tea. That doesn't change as men get older and our wives become the little girl. That natural sense of softness that women bring out in men isn't weakness. And you can tell the measure of a man by how well he cares for his wife. So I'll say that women, we thank you. We appreciate you. You're insufferable to live with 90% of the time. We wouldn't get rid of
With
you
him,
for
can't
anything.
kill him.
Yeah, they make us want to be better versions of ourselves, and I think that that's the.
They also drive us to murder suicide.
Well, I mean, there's not. You're not wrong.
There
Hey,
is
I
the
got a female voice
downside.
listening in on you guys.
So, I think our wives make us better versions of us. I think that we need to celebrate them, not in the context of, oh, Rick and Rack, here's some money, go, no. I think we celebrate our wives by showing them
She's just in the
appreciation.
background. Buy me more jewelry.
Right. No, it's our appreciation for them, and I don't think men do enough in the terms of letting our mates know that we appreciate the small things that they do to make our lives better. And like Seth said, I couldn't survive without my wife and the amount of things she does for me. Like I'm right there, dude. I'm so integrated with my wife. I could function without her. I'd be done. If she passed away today, I would be beyond destroyed. Like, there would be nothing left of me. It would take years to recover. So,
Really, Danny?
Fly?
He's being beaten by his wife.
She's beating him. Do the dishes, Fly! Boom! So.
Did I get you having opinions? Smack.
That's not an approved opinion. So, at any rate, gentlemen, thank you so much. I think the next time we'll pick up this topic. I think I want to try and want to start kind of drilling down. I wanted this to kind of be a high level discussion about the women in our lives and how they affect us. So I want to try and bring a topic that's going to be a little more easier for those who are not married, like Chris and Phil.
I don't have a problem.
No, I want to
I
start
don't.
discussing.
I like.
Hold on.
For the record, I like that people are getting married and having I like. I'm not like some bitter single guy who resents the long term marital success of others. Quite the opposite. That's what I hope
Aspire
to find
to,
myself
right.
one day. Absolutely, I don't see myself as being single on my deathbed. No, I would like to. I don't know about kids, but I would definitely like to have a partner. Yeah.
So our next topic, when we get Seth again, because I know Seth's our challenge because his schedule is kind of crazy. But the next time we got Seth around, continuing in this specific topic, I would like to go into what we believe is the ideal woman, if there is such a thing.
There is such a thing.
There is.
It's an ideal. Ideals
in your viewpoint.
It's all going to be opinion, right? And understand.
Yeah. Everybody has their own world.
No,
we all live in our own world.
Right. So I'm going to be curious as to what each man's criteria
I'll just bring
are.
a picture of some anime girl. Just act like a total weeaboo.
Wow. On the weeaboo note, thank you, gentlemen, as always. Keep and have a blessed week, and we will see you guys next week. Not sure what the topic is, depends on who we got, and we'll go from there.